Well, yippee-ki-yay, mother. Just kidding. Badass woman in Herstory. Let's do this the right way. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Wait, I did it wrong. Dum-dum-dum. Badass women in Herstory. Another Western frontiers of woman. Esther Hobart Morris. Born August 8th, 1812. Passed April 2nd, 1902. Now this is fake, okay? This is fucking fake, guys, all right? Just like your mom. Just kidding. All right, continuing on. Was the first woman justice of the peace. The first woman justice of the peace in the United States of America. Cock-a-doodle-doo. All right, continuing. So I just drank some energy drink, filled up on water, you know what I'm saying, getting at it. All right, let's wrap this up. She began her tenure as justice in South Pass City, Wyoming on February 14th, 1870, serving a term of nearly 9 months. The Sweetwater County Board of County Commissioners appointed Morris as Justice of the Peace after the previous Justice, R.S. Barr, resigned in protest of Wyoming Territory's passage of the Woman Suffrage Amendment in December of 1869, 100 years before my mama was born. Let me say that again in regular talk. So the Sweetwater County Board of County Commissioners appointed Morris as Justice of the Peace after the previous Justice, R.S. Barr, I'm starting to get into that country, not on purpose, resigned in protest of Wyoming Territory's passage of the Woman Suffrage Amendment in December of 1869. Popular stories and historical accounts, as well as by state and federal public monuments, point to Morris as a leader in the passage of Wyoming's Woman Suffrage Amendment. However, Morris's leadership role in the legislation is disputed. Morris herself never claimed any credit, ascribing the bill entirely to William H. Bright, who was member of the territorial legislature from South Pass City and the president of the Territorial Council. Now, I suspect that she told him to take credit, because if she took credit, it would make it illegitimate in most of the states, because if Wyoming had just passed it, that means that every state has to pass the woman suffrage bill or whatever it was, and that means it wasn't in every state. So if she did it, it would be harder, it would have less credibility in those times, in that time period in certain states. That's what I think. I think she actually did it, and I think she had him take credit. All right, so her early life. Esther Hobart McQuigg was born in the village of Spencer, Tioga County, New York, on 8th of August, 1812. It has been incorrectly reported she was orphaned at an early age. She actually grew up in a large family. Her mother passed away when Esther was 14, but she continued to live with her father, grandmother, and siblings until age 21. Esther then moved to the town of Owego and set up a millinery business. Esther married Artemus Slack. Imagine having a name like that. An engineer for the railroad in 1841. In May 1843, just short of her 31st birthday, her husband died. Angry with the New York laws prohibiting women from owning property, Esther moved to Illinois, where her late husband had acquired property. In 1846, Esther Slack married John Morris in Ottawa, Illinois. They subsequently settled in Peru, Illinois, where she gave birth to a son, John, in 1849, and twins, Robert and Edward, in 1851. Can you imagine having twins in 1851? Young John died as a toddler, of course, because a lot of kids died as toddlers. In 1868, Esther's husband, John, and her son, Archibald Archie, joined the throngs moving to South Pass City. I want to go back. A lot of kids died, not most or anything like that, but a lot of kids died, and so did women during childbirth, because until modern time, childbirth was like, yes, it was natural, but it was also risky business. Um, they purchased mines and worked at various jobs, making a place for Esther and the twins. In 1869, Morris and her two 18-year-old twin sons, Robert and Edward, ventured west to rejoin the rest of their family. They first traveled by train, choo-choo, to a way station on the newly completed Transcontinental Railroad. That's the sound you would hear when they were, I've been working on the railroad. Sorry. I'm having too much fun, guys. Let's see. I could totally be like a blippy for grown-ups. Hi, guys. Welcome to my backyard. I'm just kidding. At Bryan, 15 miles from present day. So let me go back. Let me finish. Let me redo the sentence. They first traveled by train to a way station on the newly completed Transcontinental Railroad. Shout out to the last episode. At Bryan, 15 miles from present-day Green River. From there, Morris and her boys continued north by stagecoach. They crossed the sand dunes before ascending a gradual mountain pass to the Sweetwater Mining District. The dry, rocky landscape that confronted 55-year-old Morris as she stepped off the stagecoach at South Pass City appeared startlingly different from the fertile landscape she had known in Illinois and New York. Instead, her new home at 7,500 feet in elevation meant scratching out a living in a barren gulch at the mouth of canyon near the Continental Divide. The Morrises settled into a 24-foot by 26-foot log cabin with a sod roof that Esther's oldest son had purchased. Winters were brutal. South Pass area residents, whose population swelled to nearly 4,000 residents, according to one estimate, either left the camp for the winter or faced extreme isolation during the long winters. On Hell on Wheels, I forgot one of those seasons, it starts off in the winter, and you see like not everybody survives the winter because there's no heater, so the winter is a fucking risky business. Where did I leave off? Both John Morris and Archie purchased interest in mining properties soon after their arrival, including the Mountain Jack, Grand Turk, Golden State, and Nellie Morgan Lodes, according to historian Michael A. Massey. Initially, prospects looked good in the midst of the gold rush. Oh shit, that's why I wore it. I just put it on because I thought it was gonna look funny and cool, but it was the gold rush. We found gold, yahoo! All right, sorry. Where the mines and adjoining businesses of South Pass City spurred employment for 2,000 workers in the midst of the gold rush during 1868 and 1869, according to a Stanford University study. But then came the bust. By 1870, most miners had left, leaving as few as 460 residents. By 1875, fewer than 100 remained. Esther Morris had hardly settled in her new home in South Pass City when District Court Judge John W. Kingman appointed her as Justice of the Peace in 1870. It took some prodding, but Morris subsequently completed an application for the post and submitted a required $500 bond. The Sweetwater County Board of Commissioners, in a vote of 2-1, approved her application on Valentine's Day, 1870. Subsequently, the county clerk telegraphed a press release announcing the historic event of the first woman justice of the peace. The Wyoming Territory's enfranchisement of women vote So in Hell on Wheels, they also talk about how Wyoming was named because at first it was gonna be the name of the guy who owned one of the railroads. The Wyoming Territory's enfranchisement of women to vote in 1869 made Morris's unprecedented appointment possible. The clerk's telegraph to the world in part read, Wyoming, the youngest and one of the richest territories in the United States, gave equal rights to women in actions as well as words. Morris's momentous appointment followed the resignation of Justice R.S. Barr, who quit. It's the Barr, baby. Who quit in protest of the territorial legislature's passage of the women's suffrage amendment in December of 1869. However, according to author Lynn Chaney, writing in American Heritage, the county board appointed Morris to complete the term of Judge J.W. Stillman. Her appointment was challenged, but ultimately her tenure was upheld. I don't know what that means. Who the fuck is Judge J.W. Stillman? Why did they just throw him in there? Whoa, Morris began her tenure as justice in South Pass City in 1870 by arresting Stillman, who refused to hand over his court docket. Ultimately, Morris dismissed her own case with the ruling that she, as an interested party, did not have the authority to arrest Stillman, according to author Lynn Chaney. Morris began anew with her own docket, holding court sitting on a wood slab in the living room of her log cabin. Chaney notes, when the lawyers who appeared in her court tried to embarrass her with legal terms and technicalities, she admitted her lack of training but was quick to let them know just whose court they were in. One of the lawyers who practiced before her recalled that to pettifoggers, she showed no mercy. I wonder what the fuck a pettifogger is. I'm some bullshitters. 3-day weekend. My sister just texted me, my mom. Morris looked to her sons for support in the courtroom. She appointed Archibald as district clerk and Robert as a part-time deputy clerk with the task of keeping court records and drawing up arrest warrants. Her husband John's support was not so forthcoming. John actively opposed his wife's appointment and reportedly made such a scene, oh man, in her court that Esther had him jailed. That's hilarious. Judge Morris ruled on 27 cases during her more than 8 months in office, including 9 criminal cases. None were overturned according to records at the Wyoming State Archives. Although a few cases were appealed but upheld by the appellate court, she held her justice of the peace post until the term that she had been appointed to fill expired on December 6, 1870. Morris sought re-election but failed to muster a nomination from either the Republican or Wyoming parties. Morris's historic judgeship gathered favorable review among the completion of her term in the South Pass News, as her son Archie was the editor. However, the historical record reveals little fanfare in the remainder of Wyoming's press. The Wyoming Tribune, published in Cheyenne, that's where a lot of Hell on Wheels takes place, did note the comments of Territorial Secretary Lee. The people of Sweetwater County had not the good sense and judgment to nominate and elect her for the ensuing term. Wow. Well, after her term in office was over, she had him arrested for assault and battery, according to American Heritage magazine. Men outnumbered women 4-1 in the mountain community where she lived. As a working mother, she held court over a camp of miners, gamblers, speculators, business owners, prostitutes, and rounders. The worst of the worst. Wild, wild west. Troubles continued to mount for the family. In 1871, fire struck from the South Pass City newspaper office, owned and operated by Esther Morris's son, Archibald Slack, forcing him and his wife Sarah to move to Laramie. They go to Laramie too. Oh shit. 20% battery remaining. They go to Laramie, which is also in the show, in Albany County, shortly after her son's departure and particularly bad winter in 71 to 72 of 1800. Morris left her husband and the camp. Morris traveled to Laramie, where she briefly lived with her son Archie. However, the former judge remained unsettled. She moved to Albany, New York, then to Springfield, Illinois, where she spent her winters, according to Massey. Summers saw her returning to Wyoming, where she spent time with her sons. Morris's wandering ended in the 1880s when she returned to Cheyenne to live with her son, Roberto. There's Robert. Morris had been but one of many in a long history of residents who saddled up and called it quits in South Pass City. Short-lived gold strikes in the 1880s, 1890s, and 1930s once again lured miners back to the mountains seeking their fortunes. Life after the mines. After Wyoming's enactment of women's suffrage in 1869, the territory's appointment of Morris as the first woman justice of the peace in the U.S. in 1870 and the first woman to hold judicial office in the modern world drew widespread national attention. First woman to hold judicial office in the modern world. Morris's involvement in women's causes also continued after she left the gold mines and South Pass City. In February of 1872, she participated in the American Women's Suffrage Association convention in San Francisco. August 1873, she was nominated by the Women's Party of Wyoming as a candidate to the Wyoming Territorial Legislature, a nomination that Morris declined. 1876, she served as vice president in the National American Women's Suffrage Association. In July of that year, addressed the National Suffrage Convention in Philly. July 1890, presented the new Wyoming state flag to Governor Warren during the Wyoming statehood celebration. That's dope. 1896, attended as a delegate to the Republican National Convention in St. Louis, Missouri, which nominated the William McKinley Garrett A. Hobart ticket. She was not related to Vice President Hobart, who died in office in 1899. Death and legacy. Esther Hobart Morris died in Cheyenne on April 2nd, 1902, at age 87. She is interred at Lakeview Cemetery in Cheyenne, where a simple stone monument adorned only with her name marks her grave site. Since 1960, a statue of her sculpted by Evard Fairbanks has been one of Wyoming's 2 statues in the National Statuary Hall collection in the U.S. Capitol. Another statue stands at the Wyoming State Capitol. In 2018, the New York Times wrote a belated obituary for her. Whoa. Evidence suggests that the public records celebrating Morris's role as a suffrage leader, solid fabrication, reports of service where she was said to have hosted a momentous tea party, are not supported by any contemporary accounts and only appear 50 years after the fact. For many years, Esther Hobart Morris has been this is all from Wikipedia, by the way. She's been celebrated as the mother of women's suffrage. The legislation had been written a year before she became a justice of the peace by Civil War veteran and South Pass City resident William H. Bright. Hey, but he needed her. They needed each other to make it happen, Captain. Let's see. Some modern day researchers have suggested that Morris's oldest son, who became editor of a Cheyenne newspaper, may have played a role in the origins of the story of his mother's role. Critics say that he concocted it. Other research leads to Morris's friend Melville C. Brown, who was president of the 1889 Constitutional Convention in Cheyenne, who claimed that she had presented the suffrage bill to the legislature. Morris's son, Archie Slack, followed suit and subsequently referred to his mother in the Cheyenne newspaper as the mother of suffrage. The Tea Party story might have faded quietly were it not for H.G. Nickerson, who had discovered and opened the bullion mine in 1868, later served as a territorial legislator for Lander. He wrote a published letter on February 14, 1919, in Wyoming State Journal, in which he recounted the Tea Party and his attendance as a legislative candidate, some 50 years after the event had taken place. In a tip of the hat honoring Morris, Nickerson wrote, "To Mrs. Esther Morris is due the credit and honor of advocating and originating women's suffrage in the United States." Nickerson's story gained widespread prominence after his friend, Wyoming historian Grace Raymond Hobart, published the account in a 1920 pamphlet entitled How Women's Suffrage Came to Wyoming, 1869. The pamphlet eventually became so widely distributed that the students throughout the state's public schools read the story memorializing Morris's suffrage feats. Hobart spent many years advancing the claim, promoting Morris as an instigator and co-author of Wyoming suffrage legislation. It's pretty cool of him, I think. I mean, because I don't think William Bright cares about credit. So to give women credit, it just adds to the lore and the legend, and I don't see it as a bad thing. But haters gonna hate. In 1960, Wyoming further celebrated Morris as a key impetus, I don't know what that word is. Key component, I'm gonna just use the word component, of Wyoming suffrage by donating a life-size bronze statue of her to the National Statuary Hall collection in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. Officiating the Statuary Hall ceremony were Vice President Richard M. Nixon and Richard Arnold Mullins, the president at the time of the Wyoming State Society. In 1963, Wyoming officials placed a replica of the same 9-foot sculpture at the state capitol building in Cheyenne. I would like to go to Cheyenne one day. An inscription thereon hails Morris as the mother of women's suffrage. In 2006, the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame in Fort Worth, Texas, inducted Morris as a suffrage pathbreaker. The Cowgirl Hall of Fame claims that her influential efforts made it possible for women to vote in the Wyoming Territory in 1869. In 1960, the actress Bethel Leslie played Morris in an episode of the syndicated television anthology series Death Valley Days. In 73 of 1900, she was inducted into the Hall of Great Westerners of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. My friends, we have done it once again. Thank you for coming to the Friday podcast. It's going to be very hard for me to spit a flow right now.